So hi everyone, welcome back to the Moringa School podcast. It's nice to have you listening to us again. Today we'll be talking about several issues. We'll be discussing the recent terrorist attack in Kenya and how we can use technology for good. We'll also be discussing a few talking points from the recent CES. We are joined by Kevin and other guests. Let them introduce themselves.
Hi guys, my name is Kevin Ahere.
My name is Melissa.
And my name is Michelle. So today we want to start with the topic of the terrorist attack that happened earlier this week, and we'd like to send our condolences out to anyone who lost a friend, a relative, or anyone you know who was in the building at the time. We'd like to send our condolences to the families, and for anyone who's recovering out there, take heart, and we hope for you a speedy recovery. Yeah, so it was such a somber day on Tuesday. Terrorists just showed up at 14 Riverside, which is in Westlands, and they opened fire and they killed a lot of people, but a lot of people also got out and they were saved, we thank God. And I don't know, where do we start in terms of how maybe we can use tech to maybe capture these things before they happen, or how we can use tech for good, as Victor said earlier, and how we can just try and avoid such situations so that in future we are better planned and we can capture these things before they happen. So maybe I'll open the floor to anyone who wants to begin the conversation.
Yes. I think beginning with the issue of terrorism and technology, I think first of all what we need to recognize is that it is there. It's already there. Terrorists also know technology exists and they know how to use it. And it's all a matter of how we use it. We as ourselves, as the good people that we are not terrorists. How can we use terrorists to facilitate good in society? How can we use technology? Did I say how we use terrorists to facilitate? Oh, my apologies for that. How can we use technology to facilitate good in society? We look at the recent events, and when we're talking about technology that is in social media and what we are communicating to our friends and family with, what are we talking about? Are we talking about how evil it was, or are we trying to see how each and every one of us is doing? How are we emotionally affected by this thing? How can we pass messages and just putting out information out there that promotes comfort, that is not comfort, but comfort as well, and just basically facilitates mental strength to handle situations like this in the society. So I think that going forward, we should understand that it is not a matter of technology being just facilitating terrorism. We can also use technology to facilitate awareness. We can use technology to facilitate support among us as community. What do you think, Kevin?
I think terrorism has benefited from technology a lot. We've seen the evolution of terrorists having more organized networks, and they can coordinate their attacks better. But on the flip side, I think also counterterrorism measures have improved, because I know you guys can attest to this attack lasting a shorter time than the previous attack at Westgate.
Yes.
So also thank you to the armed forces for the rapid response they showed us. In terms of getting information out there, what do you guys think on the people inside the building using Twitter and Instagram to let us know that they were under attack and needed help? Michelle, any thoughts on that?
I think it was very... guys got the information pretty fast, because guys on social media, especially I was on Twitter and I saw this place was under attack, and immediately I texted a few friends of mine and I first called my mother who works around that area, and I informed her of what was happening around the area. And I think social media really helps in spreading the message, but at the same time, as you've all said, on propaganda, social media can also be used by terrorists to spread propaganda. But at the same time, I loved how this time we used social media to send messages to our loved ones and to alert them on what was happening around, and even to the security forces who showed up in good time to rescue as many people as they could. I think social media this time was used responsibly, and people were really active and cautious on what they were spreading. Even though there are a few places where you could find negative and false information, I think that this time it was used pretty well. And I'd like to commend Kenyans on Twitter, Kenyans on social media, how they spread the word so fast. And yeah, to the security forces also, we thank you so much for saving the few people who are there. Oh, a lot of people who are so confused. This attack was crazy, but yeah, I think social media this time was used very responsibly. Responsibly.
Do you guys think there is a way that we can use technology to prepare ourselves better for situations like this in the future? Like we talk about having CCTV controlled buildings. We talk about, like, for instance, when I came into this building this morning, when I arrived for this podcast, at the gate they require that I write my name and I show my ID. But do you guys think there's better ways that we can use technology to keep track of what's going on in and around our community, to know, to be able to track and even maybe predict when things like this can happen, to be able to know what looks fishy, what looks out of the ordinary? And do you think that there's a way we can also use technology to create kind of like a response system for when these things happen, and we can just like have immediate reaction and control the situation before it gets out of hand? What do you think?
I mean, personally, for me, I feel like prevention is better than cure.
Yes.
And so I think where we have failed as a society is that we bring in technology when it's too late.
Yeah.
So we usually try and come up with solutions like, how can we use technology to combat terrorism rather than to prevent terrorism?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it starts with going through the mind of a terrorist. At what point does someone decide, this is what I want to do, this is the crime that I want to commit? Because everyone grows up at some point, and in those stages, in those pubescent stages, adolescent stages, what's going on in the mind of a person, of a human, to the point where they decide, this is the crime that I want to commit. You understand? And how can technology create awareness or prevent terrorism? Does it start with education?
Yeah.
Does it start with exposure?
I think so, because in our institutions, especially in something like accounts, they teach you ethics before getting into the accounting profession. So in our developer circles, I think we should also practice good ethics responsible for your technical expertise. I think ethics is very important.
Yeah, I believe it's practiced in, like, when you go to school to learn hacking, you don't learn it as hacking, you learn it as ethical hacking. You are taught how to use it responsibly, but not to explore weaknesses, but to identify weaknesses so that you can fix them.
There are actually people who are being paid to hack into systems, and then they can show those companies how to better develop their systems. But there are also people who are trained in this skill set, and they have this skill set and they can use it to maybe get into police systems. Now that we're digitizing our every other system, we're digitizing it. So how can we train our developers, our engineers to be more ethically inclined? I
think it all boils down to exposure, like we said. Like, what are you exposed to growing up? How is your mind, how is society and technology shaping? Because nowadays society is basically technology. What is society? Society is Instagram, it's Facebook, it's Twitter. It's all these things, it's WhatsApp, it's everything but I mean, we spend a good third of our day minimum looking at screens nowadays. So it's safe to say that society nowadays is technology. So technology is what's governing us. I remember one day I was having a discussion with my friend, and we were talking about how nowadays we don't even raise our kids. Technology does it for us. All we do is limit the access that they have to it. You will raise your kid and you will tell them, like, you can't say certain words. You cannot go out there calling people these things. And then at the end of the day, they come and they sit there, they put on headphones and they watch 30 minutes video of someone cursing from beginning to the end. There's no way this kid will not curse. Regardless of how good of a parent you are, it's almost impossible to shelter them from these things. So I think it boils down to what type of exposure we have to the technology that we use. Growing up, not even necessarily growing up, even as an adult, you can be affected. It's all about there's a term I saw called observing good internet hygiene. It's about how you control yourself. It's about what you search for. It's about what you watch. It's about what you listen to. It's about what you share. It's you can be affected and then spread it to other people. But I think using technology as a means for good, as a way to share a good message, and not good message. That sounds like I'm teaching an 18-year-old 13. I mean, using technology to spread better messages. To not when you receive a video about someone discussing about how they feel that the society, not the society, but maybe the government is doing something wrong and they should attack the government, they should do something like this. What do you do with such information? Yeah? Do you keep watching? Do you share? Do you tweet about it? Do you advise people against it? What do you do with it? Do you let it go into your head and start digging into more research about what government is doing wrong against you? I mean, it all boils down to what we find, what we see, and how we react to it. So, what do you guys think? Is there a way that we can use technology to better change the mindset and to better try to steer people away from internalizing the bad stuff and thinking about it, and rather to find better ways to actually sort of act against it instead of towards it?
It's a good question you have there, but that seems more like a philosophical problem.
Yeah.
With all the technology we've invented, back from the printing press to the internet right now, people will choose to use it in different ways.
Yeah.
You can't make them use the internet in like a linear way for learning and doing good things. It just needs for us to have the mindset of bad people are going to be there. So we need to find means to stop them.
Yeah, means to stop the bad people from doing bad things.
We can't exclusively say we're only going to use the internet for bad things. In an ideal world, like the internet is the savior of our species.
Yeah.
You can get for real.
It's the savior of the destroyer. You never know.
You can get info from any era in human history on the internet right now. You can also get information on how the most evil people in history used propaganda to influence people's minds. So I think we just need to focus more on how we're going to stop them if it does happen.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think of the new forms of crime that the internet or that technology has brought about? Because even before the internet, there were still forms of terror, right?
Yeah.
But now with the internet, with technology, there's also cybersecurity problems. There's hacking, which is a very big problem. I have a friend who recently got hacked. Her Instagram was hacked, and the hacker deleted all her posts. So what's sad about this is that she's a public figure, and so she's also a content creator, and her portfolio is basically her work, the photos that she's taken, the videos, the documentaries that she's done, and her personal brand. You know how she gets work is through her social media, right? So I mean, they really tried to find obviously who the hacker was. She contacted someone in cybersecurity, but they weren't able to trace. The only thing they could find was the IP address, and that gives you such limited information depending on your level of knowledge of cybersecurity. So, I mean, is that terrorism? Is that obviously it's an attack on a personal level? Who knows who it could have been? But new forms of crime, new forms of terror that we're going to see in the future. What do you think? How can we combat that? How can we prevent that before it happens? Because there's this assumption that terrorists are not tech savvy, and they are. You understand? So what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the new forms of crime that technology is bringing about or will bring about?
I don't know. I think people need to be filtered. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but as we were discussing earlier before the podcast started, we said when there's an increase in like maybe an attack or just bad behavior in society, there'll be a demand for us to prevent this thing from happening. So let's say right now we have a terror attack, right? And we want to improve our cybersecurity services. So we'll introduce like cybersecurity courses in our different universities. That will attract a lot of people because there's opportunity, there's money in it. But then who are they attracting? Are they attracting good people or people who want this skill to use it to kill people or to do another bad thing? So who are we attracting into these courses which have this technical expertise that can do a lot of damage and yet so much good at the same time? So I don't know. It's such a
tough conversation.
It's a tough conversation.
But it's a global conversation.
Yeah.
What Melissa was talking about her friend who is a social media personality.
She's a journalist.
Yeah. You see, like someone like that, you can say her portfolio is her internet presence, you know. And when you hack into her internet presence and delete all of it, you're basically deleting this person's livelihood. So I think you can narrow it down to saying that terrorism. First of all, I had once the definition of terrorism being using violence to gain political advantage. But I feel like it's so much more than just gaining political advantage. It even just using violence, whether it be internet violence, to attack someone personally. I think it's a form of terrorism done on its own. Maybe not the right technical word to use for it, but it is harassment. You know,
it's cyberbullying.
It's cyberbullying. Exactly. Now that's the right word. So I think when it comes down to this, there's little to nothing we can do to prevent these things, because people there'll always be bad people in the society, and technology will always be there. We're in the age of Google, where literally there's everything on the internet. So you cannot prevent someone from learning how to hack and delete someone's social media presence. You cannot do that, Senor. So I think the conversation moves from how these people are doing it to how we can protect ourselves from it.
But I would argue that, for example, whenever a mass shooting occurs in the States, you'll find that the attacker was cyberbullied in the high school, for example. So it's not so much about what we can do to protect ourselves. I think we also have to find some sense of responsibility as a society. Like, is the way we're acting fostering people or certain individuals? Are we responsible for that, for them to become terrorists? Are bad people always going to be bad, or do good people decide to do bad things? It's very interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think are we responsible for what we breed in society, for what we raise, or the people that we raise, the children that we're bringing up? It's very easy to shift the blame and say it's that bad person who did something bad and they should be held accountable. But when you look at the environment, I'm not trying to sympathize or empathize with the villain, but are we responsible?
I can say to some extent society is responsible. If you look at like our country, our economy, the youth, the people who are engaging in such acts are the youth. The youth in Kenya, we are being told that we are the highest unemployed in the world. In Africa, the youth are the highest unemployed. We don't have jobs. We can't use our skill sets to better our lives, and poverty. I don't know. Africa just has a lot of problems that can breed such things to occur. Yeah, to some extent, I can say yes.
To some extent.
Yeah, by that argument, you're saying that what we should focus on doing is providing better life for people,
Yeah.
so that they don't resort into either blaming society for doing wrong and deciding to act against it, or blaming the government for not taking care of them and acting against the government using events of terrorism. It's about trying to find ways to better lives of people, so that they don't focus on the bad rather than just live good life.
And I think one of the solutions, in my view, is mental health awareness, right? Both on the side of the victim, the victimized, the people who've gone through the trauma or PTSD of having gone through a terror attack, and also the people who commit the crime, because you find that a lot of the people have gone through some form of mental health issue. Maybe they're bipolar, or maybe they are depressed, maybe they suffer anxiety, because you talked about the youth and unemployment. That's something we cannot leave out of the conversation if we're talking about not just terrorism, but why people choose to commit a crime. You understand? So I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on that, because I know right after the attack, there are a lot of therapists, counselors, psychologists offering free services, which is very good. But how can we move that beyond immediately after a terror attack happens? That's when it's offered, to it being an every other day thing. Not so much that it has to be free, but how can we make mental health services more available? Because I think that comes under prevention and not trying to cure the situation at hand.
Do you think tech has any solutions for us? Could we build platforms for doing checkups on our mental health, and maybe steps we can take? Because therapists basically talk to you, right? You guys think tech has any solutions for us in terms of...
Definitely.
Yeah.
There is a company called Twakena. Twakena actually offers, it's a Kenyan startup that offers online mental health services. And the team is made up of psychologists, people who have masters and PhDs in psychology and can actually offer professional advice. What's really good about this platform is that it's anonymous, and so you don't have to disclose who you are or all your personal information. You can actually just talk to an online
Is there a fee?
psychologist. It's not free.
Okay.
Yeah. Should it be free? I mean, our healthcare system is already not free. You need some form of insurance to get access to dental services or medical services. So I doubt it's free. It would not be sustainable if it's free unless it's subsidized by the government. But maybe that also brings up the question of what can the government or people in governance do to subsidize some of these costs when it comes to mental health awareness. It's a very, very tough conversation to have, but it needs to be had.
I think in Kenya we still haven't adopted like people going for therapy. It's a very small population, maybe the affluent population who can afford such care for their mental health. I think a lot. We still live in a conservative Kenya, if I may say, from where I come from. We still live in a conservative space where you have to like hold your feelings, or when you're younger you're not even being listened to. I'm not saying this is my experience. I'm allowed to speak my thoughts in a moderated way. I think I can say that at this point in my life. But we come from a society where younger people are not listened to, younger people are not appreciated. Mental. The reason why I asked if it was free, I don't know, I'm Kenyan. Kenyans, we like free things, but at the same time, a service like that is, especially between maybe when you enter high school and when you're about to leave college, I think mental hygiene is very important, so that when you're going into now your years of working and interacting with people from maybe different nationalities, and you're traveling all over the world as an adult, you're able to articulate yourself well, and you're able to put yourself in groups where people grow you, and you're able to be just a better person in society, contributing to good, instead of maybe you lose yourself somewhere when you're younger. When you're younger, you don't have all the information, and maybe mental health between high school and in your college years, I think it can be very important to adopt that culture.
And also not just relying on mental health services, but then also practicing self-care.
Yeah.
So practicing mindfulness,
Yeah.
meditating, doing some form of exercise, trying to involve yourself in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, just to get your mind off of the trauma that comes after a terror attack. Because, for example, I was not inside Riverside when it happened, but a lot of my friends and family members were sharing the images and the videos and trying to warn you. And there's a lot of fear mongering that goes on in WhatsApp. So someone will tell you, oh, be careful of going to this mall because there might be a terror attack, and it's fear mongering. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, but you end up starting to want to be in isolation. You don't want to leave the house. You can't really block some friends from sending you some, because the intention is good. They're trying to warn you, but at the same time, if you're consuming that type of content, even when you've not requested for it, it can actually affect your mental health. So just trying to practice some form of self-care is very important.
It's interesting that you bring that up. Where exactly do you stand on sharing messages like this? Because I feel on the one hand, it's really important to just let people know if there's any danger. But on the other hand, you're also helping the terrorists because they thrive on fear. Yes. So what exactly do you do in situations like this?
I think she means accurate information, not false information, not a photo you saw in 2010, now you're putting it in this agenda for 2019. Yeah, I think that's what she's speaking.
Yeah, that's completely, we agree on that.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes you might see, for example, I saw this message going around on WhatsApp. It said, if anyone is inside the building, please contact them. There was a name and a phone number. And when we Googled that number and on LinkedIn, it wasn't like a police officer or a member of the armed forces. It was just a regular guy, which I think is part of the misinformation.
Right.
So, yeah.
And also, speaking of misinformation, you'll find that a lot of people who were trying to assist or trying to tweet about what's going on ended up getting detained. And so at what point you decide, I want to help, I want to try and maybe donate blood or give more information or provide access or just create awareness, but it ends up you end up incriminating yourself.
Yeah. Like one of the cases that most of our listeners might have heard of is Bryson Mamburi. So for those of you not familiar with the story, this is a fourth year JQuat student who was studying IT and was interning at Cheki at the time. So Bryson was among the first people to hear the shots and tweeted about it. And as he was escaping through Nairobi River, he realized he can help some people. So as he was trying to help people out of the building, unfortunately, he was arrested and detained by the Kenya police. Through some of his friends and family, people mobilized and got on Twitter and really just made his case for him to the authorities. And it must have been seen by someone. And just through constant pressure, we thank God that Bryson was released. But yeah, so it's like a delicate balance between preserving safety and just also sharing new information.
I think that this topic is heavy, but at the same time, I think that we need to have it so that we are vigilant and we can see us as developers, like you said, Kevin, we can create like an emergency services app where people can maybe like donate blood. And we can also use our private social media to give maybe correct information to other people who might need. I don't know. This it's really open.
What ways do you think that tech can combat terrorism?
Yeah.
I think there are a number of ways which we can use to combat this vice. I think one of the most obvious and most important ones is equipping our police better to deal with these issues. With the advent of big data and machine learning and better tools to analyze, I think tech companies should be able to give our information to to security forces. I know that's going to be controversial with a lot of our listeners, but think about it. Is it really okay with you that Google and Facebook know everything about you and can sell it to advertisers, but where you draw the line is, I don't want the government to have my data. Yeah. Do you guys ever see that paradox? Yeah. So I think, just improving intelligence gathering and also strengthening our police force and outreach. I was watching a video by Africa Uncensored recently about the attack. So you can see like John Allen Namu and his camera guy try to follow some of the police officers into the building as the situation is still live. So there was a particular situation which was super dangerous. They were all looking upwards at like one of the higher floors at Dusit. And then one of the terrorists threw a grenade at them. So the grenade thankfully didn't explode. But I think if some of the techies in Kenya could have built like maybe drones or just unmanned vehicles, which could have gone into the building and given them like a tactical advantage as they were looking at, as they were trying to find these people. There's so much tech that's we're underutilizing. What about like thermal imaging to find where these people were? Because a lot of this tech is available to us, and it's not as expensive as we might think. We just need like smart people speaking to the police so we can also like save lives. Do you guys agree?
I definitely agree.
Yes.
And is it, do we have to train the police force or people working in different levels of security to be more tech savvy? Or do you think we should foster more partnerships between developers and people in security?
I think the latter is a better solution. Starting to train someone who all his training he has been told how to shoot a gun and throw a grenade and protect civilians when it comes to it, and then start telling them about technology. I feel like it's a bit more, taking them out of their way. I think it should come down to specialization. Like instead of teaching police officers or these armed forces how to use too much technology to solve crime, have a unit specifically trained on using technology to solve these problems. So such that when, for instance, in the situation of the recent terror attack, you have the armed unit ready to storm in, and then you have the technical unit of that armed forces surveilling the situation, telling them there's this number of guys on this room, sending in the drones, sending in the unmanned vehicles. And then I feel like that would be a better approach to it, rather than starting retraining already trained officers on, technology.
But what about the ones who are just entering the force? For example, if you've left high school or you've left university and you're interested in going to a defense college, you're still, you're a millennial, you're young, you've probably interacted with technology. Do you think in terms of training new security talent, it's important to train them technically? I think that's very important.
I think it can be approached kind of the way armed forces approach field medics. You see, and field cooks. They're really good cooks, but they can shoot a gun. That's how they are trained. So I think it can be approached in the same way. Like if you want to get into forces, but as a technical person, yes, you focus on combating terrorism attack using technology. You focus on knowing how they are hacking, on knowing how they are communicating or tapping into their sat phones during communication with their mobiles, and trying to stop them from that directive. But on the other hand, you're a soldier first, so should it come down to it, you should also be able to protect yourself and civilians.
Definitely.
Yes.
I think tech could also be useful in creating like better social services. What I mean by this is we should be able to interface with our leaders and speak to them more, because I find that propaganda works so much better for people who are disenfranchised, and they only have like all the information they get is linear. Like picture like a young boy in, I don't know, Mandera or Lokichar, like Did you guys know that people from the northern part of Kenya don't consider themselves Kenyans? I had friends in high school who were like genuinely used to talk about Nairobi as Kenya and their homes as just Turkana. So they're like, hey, nimefurahia tena kuja Kenya. Can you imagine? So
actually,
like,
you're the second person I know who said that. They visited Turkana, and they said that, you know, a lot of people there do not consider themselves Kenyan or in Kenya, even when geographically and politically they are.
They really don't, because to them it's just a land where the government is, and they have no idea what it looks like for. So I think, yeah, like Victor was saying earlier, just exposure to just more tech and just platforms where they can speak to their leaders and all these things. If I knew that there was someone in my location recruiting young people and telling them the way the government in Nairobi is evil and they just want to kill our people, they're the ones who cause the droughts and all these propaganda messages they're sending, like, I can be able to speak to my leader and they'll like disparage this shit.
I definitely agree with you, because and I genuinely feel like we are our brother's keepers. You know, that same person who decides to shoot 100 people in a building probably feels disenfranchised. They feel like maybe they can't get a job, forgetting that even the person that they're shooting is probably looking for a job. Maybe they were at an interview to do it. So I feel like we don't realize that we have a shared struggle, and we need to find commonality as the youth, and also bridge that ageism gap of it's us versus them. It's the old people who are in power, and it's us young people who are struggling. I think we need to find some sense of commonality and unity.
Yeah, and something that I also saw during this attack was a sense of community. When it came to, if I compare it to, I'm not comparing, but when it came to this particular attack, I saw a sense of community right now. As you said, people are offering free counseling services. There were people who were serving food to the soldiers who had stayed there the whole night. So I think from this sense of community, we can create our own like WhatsApp groups. People are talking about the Nyumba Kumi initiative. How come I did not know my neighbor was about to do this? So I think for that initiative, since it was not working before, I think that chiefs and people who are responsible for a particular like zone, they need to know how like people who've moved into the neighborhood and how they are contributing to that neighborhood and who these people actually are. And maybe for an initiative like that, they can use tech, maybe to put maybe a ledger, I don't know. Tech can be used in some sort in maybe an initiative like Nyumba Kumi.
It's interesting that you mentioned a divide in terms of age, you said. Yeah, I think there's also like a really massive social divide amongst like the social classes in Nairobi. It didn't happen with this attack specifically. I felt like we had a more cohesive voice with this attack.
Yeah.
But during Westgate, there were people who actually could not be bothered. I was like, unfortunately, I saw this tweet, like this thread just after Westgate, where I don't remember the user, but they were asking like game ni sangapi. Like they generally did not care about it. So when people tried to like get on his case and asked him why he was so insensitive, he was like, there were 40 cops who were shot in Baragoy by like the cattle rustlers, and no one really cared. Do you guys just only care when rich people are shot? Which I feel like is a sentiment that was also seen widely after there were like 147 kids, university age students who were shot dead in Garissa. Don't quote me on this, but I feel like
you're on record. You literally
don't quote me on this, but I feel like the response then to the Garissa attack might have been more muted than like the response we saw after Westgate.
Completely. And I think one question that I have to all of you is, why is it that there's more media attention when it's luxury hotels like Dusit or more affluent residences like Riverside, and not so much about media attention, but why do terrorists choose such places? Obviously, it's because they'll gain more focus, more attention. Is there a reason? Do you think there's a reason that place was targeted specifically? Because again, part of fear-mongering and rumor making is that there were about 180 US visitors who had come in for some conference. There's so many stories that were going on as to why that specific place. But do you feel like some places get more media attention when they're hit or attacked? And why?
I think terror operates like any other business or organization. So they're looking for return on investment. I'm sure they're aware that the areas where they're going to get like
most coverage.
like the most coverage, because they're in the business of spreading fear. So if they attacked like God forbid like a primary school in the middle of nowhere in northeastern, it would be like a massive tragedy. But attacking the heart of your city, especially where the like loads of techies and all these things,
investors,
so they know that this is going to have like international repercussions. They know so I feel like running a business, they know exactly what's going to give them like the most return.
Yeah, because Nairobi University is just next to it, and they already went to another university. I don't know. Such close proximity when you think about it. Why did they not? But it's already happened, and I think that I don't know. My head is just in a whirlwind right now, trying to
process.
I'm still processing this information, and I think going into buildings sometimes, even going into the supermarket. I went to the supermarket yesterday, and I got out there as soon as I could. And I think that the government can, this time their response was better, their cybersecurity. I'm sure the army when they went in, they did a quick job. And even when their responses, when they're getting this information about he lived here, he lived in Eldoret, he has relatives on this side, now they're in Mombasa, I think that this time the intel was quite okay. It was quite, and I hope they can do better, and I hope that us, even as developers, when you're creating these applications, create applications, like we've said from episode 1, create applications which are good for society, create value in society. Someone out there, create an emergency response application. I understand there's a Red Cross application where people can get blood, teach people how to, because terrorism is not just specific to Kenya, it's all over the world. So I think we need to create an application which can teach people how to counter these attacks, and when let's say they're in this situation, how they can go about the situation in order to save their life, or if you're out there, how you can use social media to be better and to do better, and how you can help your community. I think we need to create these communities also, and I think we also need to have a counter-terrorism conference just specific to Kenya, or just Africa and other countries which are affected by terrorism in the last few years can come and showcase to us what we can do as a society to improve on this.
And one last thing that I saw is now private guards are going to be armed. I'm curious to know what your take is on that, because
so
now, even I was at the hub in Karen recently. I was going shopping, and now you have to get out of your car, kind of like how it is in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It's not just about scanning your car and opening your windows and opening your boot. Now passengers have to get out and drivers have to get out, and then they search you before you even enter. And immediately I entered, there was one of the guards who had a gun, and then there was another guard right inside who had. So, I mean, we're stepping into an age in Kenya where more people will be armed, not just people in security. And so, what do you guys think about that? Because it even gets to a point you're like, well, should I also get a licensed firearm? It's what do you do? What do you guys think about that whole arms movement happening right now?
Well, personally, to me, I genuinely see the need for it, but I think it's a misstep, and here's why. Kenya is one of the most polarized and unequal societies in the world, not only in Africa. And in societies like this specifically, adding guns to people who are also struggling with mental health issues is going to be a massive tragedy. That's what I think. But that said, there's still the need for better security. So
to your point, they said that in, I think, Uganda and in Rwanda, they have this policy where security guards have firearms. So why is Kenya not having the same measures to protect our people? So I think that's where the argument for the private security guards having firearms came into question. Why is it that in Uganda and Rwanda they have no terrorist attacks, but in Kenya our guards are not armed, and how can we better their safety?
I think going forward, arming guards, it's almost if it's happening, it's happening. Cynthia, I always say that sometimes there's little to nothing we can do when policies are made by the people in government. It's maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but democracy also has its limits. If they decide they've done that and they pass it as a bill, what can we do? So the best thing that we can do is find a way to have better registration systems, better tracking systems. Know who has the gun, where they have the gun, where they use the gun.
Yes.
So that we don't have people shooting out everyone, and we don't know who shot them. We don't know where they got the gun from. Yeah, we don't know under who the gun is registered. So I think we just need to, if we are going to move forward with the arming of security guards, then there needs to be proper record. There needs to be transparency, so that everyone that is armed is known. So that should they ever decide to use the gun against, for no good, it will be known, and there can be countermeasures next time, like, why did this go wrong? Did we not vet him correctly? Did we not train him correctly? And it can be improved gradually over time. So it's more about how we approach it rather than the issue itself.
Yeah.
So we approach it in a way such that we approach it carefully and with room for improvement. We structure it such that we can be able to improve it real quick and gradually and for the better. Yeah.
I agree.
So away from private guards, Melissa, what do you think on individuals owning guns?
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation, because you have some countries in the UK. I mean, you have some countries like the UK, for example, where even police guards do not have guns. And you'll find the odd terror attack happening once every few years, but it's very safe. You can walk at 2 a.m. without the fear of being robbed. You can get on a bus without the fear of something happening to you. So I don't know. I mean, I think while it's interesting, I mean, it's good to protect yourself. Personally, for me, as an individual, I would not like to own a firearm ever. Because, for example, if someone gets shot, it's not so much, the person, it's because there was a gun. That's why crime happened, So for me, it's a no for me. What do you think, Michelle?
Me too. I don't like guns at all.
Yeah.
But I can. There was one of the officers who was in there. He said maybe we need to incorporate some first aid into our education system. People need to be fit. I think that's what I can do personally. Instead of owning a gun, I can be personally fit. I can teach myself first aid. I don't.
There's actually this man. He's called Inayat Kasam.
Yeah.
And he offers training, like defense training.
Yeah.
Krav Maga, which is basically using whatever you have around you to protect yourself. I think there are many measures you can take to protect yourself without using a firearm. And there's this quote that people like to use. They say that guns don't shoot people, people shoot people. Or is it that guns shoot people or people don't shoot people? One of those.
Guns don't shoot, it's people that shoot.
People. But if there was no gun, no one would be shot. Just to reiterate what I've said. What do you think, Kevin and Victor?
I think it's a slippery slope from the private guards owning the guns. Then next, what happens if one of the private guards goes rogue or something? Just before Victor shares his thoughts, I would also like to hear about a solution that's from left field. Have you guys heard of universal basic income?
No.
So it's a concept where you give everyone in the society enough money just to live on and cover their basic
so
needs.
Like welfare.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically welfare.
Exactly like so you get cash instead of like how does welfare work? You get points you can go redeem or something.
Yeah, you can get cash. You can get a weekly allowance depending on how many children that you have. If you're unemployed, for example, in Germany, they pay for your flat. They pay for you to get a suit to attend your first interview, and some people can be unemployed for up to 2 years, but the government will give them some form of welfare. In the UK as well, if you earn below a certain amount, you can be on unemployment benefits and get, I think it's probably gone up, but a few £100 a week. It works in some states. Would that work in Kenya?
What do you think?
What do you think?
What I think it boils down to societal. Kenya, I feel like it would be exploited. Very much. People would be like, why do I need to go to work if I can get paid for being unemployed? You know, I think it works in societies where cost of living is so high that even with that unemployment benefit, you still need to supplement yourself. But in Kenya, cost of living is really not high. Like, I mean, in Kenya, with $1,000, you can live a very comfortable life. $1,000 per month. In a country like the States, that's not enough to get you through a week.
That's poverty.
Yeah, that's poverty. So you see, like, so that by virtue of that, it means that unemployment benefit would either be very little, such that it's almost not relevant, or if it's enough, then it will be exploited so badly with such a low cost of living. I mean, give someone 30,000 Kenyan shillings for free monthly, they will not work. They will not seek employment. They will freelance here and there, do their own thing, and at the end of the month, go collect their unemployment salary.
Let me pick your brain a bit more on this.
Yeah.
So I think there was a study actually done in Kenya on universal basic income. And like a lot of people had the same expectations that you did. Like, watu watachukua hiyo pesa waende walewe. Yeah, like they just thought like guys just go get drunk with the money and just squander it, but people actually ended up using this money on food and education and transport and stuff like that.
I completely agree with you, and I'm not defending my case of looking at the negative side. I'm just saying, like, when you put it in such that you're offering this money to someone who is in a position to improve themselves, like a student, then it makes sense, and I completely agree with that. You're freeing this person up from having to study for like 3 hours and then go to hustle to make school fees and to make rent. But when you facilitate them by giving them, free school fees, free food, free money benefits for upkeep, then you are enabling them, to empower themselves. So it's also a matter of when and who at the point in life are you giving them these benefits. If you're giving these benefits to someone who is not in a position to, someone who is not personally looking to empower themselves, then, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept to explore because just like as hard as I'm defending it, I've seen even the higher education loans being misused. We've all seen these guys who get the loan and they don't pay for any of the education. They just go and splurge it on a few weekends. So yeah, I think universal basic income is an interesting topic to explore as a countermeasure for terrorism.
Let me chime in on welfare as a tool to combat terrorism. You see, the thing is, on the face of it, such measures seem to be fine, but when you actually scrutinize them a little bit, you'll discover that they fall flat. And this is what I mean. You see, the thing is, when you look at terrorism, especially if you look at the form that it's taking now, which is religious fundamentalist terrorism, it is multifaceted. But financial motive is actually the lowest factor. And this is what I'm saying. Because if you look, for example, in Kenya, Poorest people are not from a particular community only. Poverty strikes the whole nation. Lack of access to education, amenities, lack of financial mobility, economic mobility affects cross religions, cross ethnicities. Yet, you find that more often than not, the form of crime, because all of them get into crime, but the form of crime that is fundamentalist religious terrorism takes a particular shape and form. So that already disqualifies finance as a factor. If you look at welfare states, one of the largest welfare states is Saudi Arabia. It is a welfare state in its essence. The government subsidizes a lot of things, subsidizes education, subsidizes a lot of things because of their oil wealth and because it's an absolute monarchy. But it is the largest exporter, of terrorism.
Do you have data to back this up?
That is the largest export of terrorism.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have hard data, but I will tell you just one fact. Okay. Of the 19 attackers in 9/11, 12 of them or so were from Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Laden was from Saudi Arabia. Many terrorism, even the terrorists that attacked Kenya in August 8 were from Saudi Arabia. Many terrorists are from Saudi Arabia. Okay? So the thing is, finance isn't a motive. Okay? The reason why I'm saying that, it's not to castigate a particular community of religion. That's why I'm not naming names, right? The reason why I'm saying that is to effectively combat something, you need to critically analyze it. Okay? If I have a rotten wound that is rotten, and it reaches the point where I have to amputate it, to tell somebody I need to chop off your foot to save your life, the doctor needed to analyze it and come to the hard decision. I think it's a battle of ideas. I think we need to combat this ideology with a superior ideology. Okay? And I do not think we can reduce it just to throwing money at the problem, or reduce it to financial, to the factor, to the lack of finances and stuff, because poverty affects most of Africa. But most of the terrorism in most of Africa does not reflect the face of Africa. It reflects, affects, and afflicts particular communities from a particular belief system that is fundamentalist in nature.
I completely get what you're saying, and I agree on many levels. What I was trying to bring out is, what do you think of everyone starting from a level playing ground as a means to reduce the impact of propagandists on our youth? Because we're going to have like the largest youth population in the world. You know that, right?
Yes.
Africa in a few years.
Yes.
So with the advent of Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram, how do we stop young people who are seemingly disenfranchised from joining these criminal organizations? What do you think would be like a better way to stop people joining these organizations?
Okay. This is how I'd answer it. You see, I would take it much wider than this particular form of illegalities, if I might put it like this. This particular shape in which illegalities take accounts to very few deaths. But because of the nature of it, it has a big magnifying glass that is not equivalent to its actual impact on society. Okay? More people die from other forms of illegal activity, from drug abuse, from shootings, domestic violence, from just general delinquent behavior from young people. Are you getting? So if we look at it like that, that is when finance becomes a factor. Because across the different shapes illegal activities take, disenfranchisement, poverty, lack of economic mobility is a factor in all of them, right? So what I'm trying to say is, do not limit this fight to this one form in a big spectrum of illegal activity. This is one form it takes, which is fundamentalist belief, okay? So fundamentalist belief is one form, but there is crime, there is involvement in drugs, there is all those things. And yes, All those things can be sorted, but it can't be sorted the way I'm assuming you're saying. You can't throw money at it. The best thing you can do to somebody, and I'm going to use a statistic, over 90% of lottery winners go back into poverty within 5 years. Okay? I'm going to throw another statistic. It is theorized that if everybody was to be given this, if all the money of the world was to be taken and given to everybody equally, in 6 years, the richest people will be rich and the poorest people will go back to poverty. The issue isn't money or a starting playing field. The issue is education and giving somebody meaning and purpose. When somebody has a purpose, they will automatically start living out bad behavior. So in other words, what are our African youth living for? In other words, we need to define an African dream. That is what I'm saying. Combating the ideology with a stronger ideology. And that ideology is cross-platform. Telling somebody there is no need to litter. We have an African dream. There is no need to get involved in drugs. There is an African dream. There is a place, a part for you individually to play in this dream of ours. We need to discover what it means to be African. That's the beauty about Africa, was that we had a culture and a society that found a way to deal with its social delinquents without jails and dungeons. We never had jails and dungeons. What does that mean? We used honor. We used a greater ideal to be able to create a society that people self-regulated. There's certain things you just didn't do. You didn't want to offend the ancestors. We didn't want to offend our elders. There are certain values we held as Africans that for us to be colonized, they had to water down those values first. Then they could introduce to us a value system that was strange to us, and that it disenfranchised us as a people and had us compete on that new value system from a disadvantaged starting point. But as Africans, we've caught up. We started way behind, but we've caught up. We have techies. We are building tech that's even been used in for example, in America. After post-election violence, a Kenyan built a system that was being used in states during the presidential election of Trump to see if there's violence coming up. That's a Kenyan who did that. Those are Africans building solutions that are being used in the West. We've caught up. Now let's rediscover our own value system and put it on top of this value system to create a future for a new Africa where our young have a value system that is not strange to them.
It's a powerful argument. One of the other things we were discussing was arming private guards. Just tell us your thoughts on that, and also, like, by extension, arming private citizens.
I'm pro-gun in a sense, because I believe that, I believe that evil prevails when good people do not act. What do I mean by that? There is a gentleman, an Asian gentleman, I'm assuming. He saved a lot of people, both at Westgate and during this particular attack. He was an armed citizenry. And I'm sure that a lot more would have been prevented if there were good armed citizens to oppose the bad actors. Okay? But such a system has to have some safeguards because, okay, you can't just arm everybody. You have to take into account that when guns are in the home, careless parents can have, kids can get hurt and stuff. There's a lot that goes to gun management and maintenance. I believe the system that we now have in Kenya is strict enough, okay? But the thing is, I don't think that evil people will lack access to ammunition and guns. They already get access to ammunition and guns. So, an evil person will have access to ammunition and guns. If we have a registry the way we have in Kenya, where citizens who are armed, the police and the authorities know who they are, know where they are. We have a licensing system. We can move forward in such a way that we can expand that, give more training, and say we have, for example, a point system. You need to be of a certain minimum age and you need to have, proved yourself in society. For example, you don't give 20-year-olds guns. You say you have to have 35 and above. That's when you can apply for a license. And then you get training for at least a year. And then after that, you're licensed to carry a firearm. Okay? And then you have to prove that you can.
The mental part. Do you think that mentally... Do you think there's supposed to be a mental aspect into owning a gun?
Yes. But I don't want a very expensive, bulky system. So I'm assuming by the time you're reaching 35, you've filtered for those issues. You'll have flagged down any mental cases by the time you reach 35. Now, I am talking off the top of my head. I've not thought this through, but I am pro-gun. I am for arming citizens or a particular subset of citizens to be able to stand in and prevent and subsidize the police force. Because when an incident happens, for example, at that particular place, there might not be many police force, but a few citizens who have the capacity to even hold or to push back a little or to kind of stand the attack and tell them, oh, I'm hearing that there is return fire somewhere, saves lives, even if it's one life. That could be my brother. That could be everything to me. That one life saved by one citizen could be everything to me. I think, Max, you should join in. What do you think of the whole gun issue?
Yeah, first of all, I think it would be... First of all, I'd like to make it known that I am pro-gun. Then, second of all, it would be better to arm our private security guards and the citizens generally. Because, let's see, our security guards are not armed. They only carry batons and... Yeah, they only carry batons, and so we have a situation whereby there are armed gangsters with AK-47s and you have your security guard with a baton. That isn't fair, so I think it would be fair to arm them so that we can, say, level the playing field. That would really reduce the cases. I think it would really reduce the cases, yeah.
So, I mean, just to be a bit of a conspiracy theorist, you don't think that this is part of an arms sort of dealership movement to get more people to purchase guns?
Okay.
I mean, would you say it was a planned attack with the intention, or with one of the intentions being that?
Okay. I think in life you can't rule out anything. That could be a possibility. But the reason I'm thinking it's highly unlikely, and because of this. First of all, bad actors, guns in East Africa, the Horn of Africa, is very cheap to acquire. But licensed guns, to get them legally in Africa, let me not say Africa, let me not speak for the continent, let me speak about East Africa. I know about Tanzania and Kenya, let me just limit them to those two nations. It's very expensive. There are hundreds of thousands to get a firearm. It's tens or even sometimes just thousands to rent an illegal firearm. So it is more expensive to acquire a firearm. There won't be a mass push in Africa to buy firearms for citizenry. Now, however, if you're to say you're going to require all security guards to be armed as a factor of law, you require it, then that could be an issue. But I wouldn't think they would go through the whole of instigating an attack, because the people who went there for that attack weren't going there because they were paid to do it. They went there because they believed in it so much that they're willing to die. It was a suicide mission. You're not paying somebody to have that commitment. That's somebody who believes intently with his life, willing to put his life for the ideology that he's dying for. Those aren't mercenaries who are just in it for profit. Those were people who went there saying, I am going there to die. I believe in what I'm doing to the point I'm willing to lay my life. That is an ideological issue. It is not simply a political issue. It is not simply an issue which you can solve by throwing money at it. It's an issue which we can tackle as a people. First thing, we should not, and this I cannot stress this enough, we should not set apart any section of our populace and lump them with the perpetrators of that attack, because there are Muslims who died there. You get what I'm saying? So we as a nation need to fight this fundamentalist ideology first by isolating it and not putting any part of our population who are innocent, who are law-abiding citizens, who believe in their God and are good people for their faith. And we should not put them together with people who will commit such atrocious acts and lump them together. So we need to isolate the ideology and say this is wrong. We as a people, no matter your tribe, no matter your race, no matter your religion, we do not stand for any ideology that condones the slaughter of innocent people. Okay? And then we attack that ideology with an ideology. You cannot do it by force. That just seems to strengthen the resolve. Because if somebody is willing to put his life for something, you're not going to threaten his life for him to change. You need to bring up an idea, an ideology. You fight idea with a more superior idea.
And is there any way that tech can come in, like, to combat terrorism, in your view? I know we've belabored the point,
yes.
But how do you think technology can be used to drive social impact?
Technology is amazing. Technology is amazing. The reason I'm saying that is, already right now, technology helped a lot of people at that place. Social media, first of all, spread the awareness of what is happening faster than it would have been if there was no social media. People were tweeting. There was a gentleman who was tweeting, and everybody was with him. Everybody was cheering for him. That gentleman is like, he's in the bathroom, he's waiting. Everybody was rooting for him, and people were trying to get him because of that. I saw us come together as a nation because of technology. Technology exposed the brutality of this particular act to the point it shook our conscience and got us together and said, no, this shall not stand. At a time of deep division, political division, we stood together because of technology. But not only that, practically technology can be used. There's this new technology I'm hearing, it's called smart gun. So basically, you can only fire it. Okay, it's been hacked, so they're still tweaking the technology, but you can only fire it if you're the owner of the gun. So if you're the owner of the gun, you're the only one who can fire it. So they're trying to improve that technology. It was hacked, but they're trying to improve it. But what does that mean? That means that I buy my firearm legally, I'm the only one who can fire it. So if somebody steals it to go take it to the black market, it doesn't work. If somebody steals it to go sell it illegally, it doesn't work. And then now we can improve the accountability of firing a firearm. In other words, if I fire it, first of all, it is known I fire it. If we have the Internet of Things, it sends a blast that this particular gun belonging to Leo Igane has been fired at this location. That's also, maybe I'm being attacked by somebody. That's also an alarm system. Authorities are involved and they're aware that this gun has been fired at a particular place, and they come in. Other, for example, subsidiary people, maybe gun owners in the vicinity, that's a distress call. They can come in and say, why are you firing it? So if I am being careless with my firearm, response is quick. If I am being careful, if I'm actually being responsible with my firearm, help is coming quick. Okay? And then with that, we dry out the supply of illegal firearms to the point that if a bad actor is firing, the gun is firing is registered to him, it's easy to find him. He's robbed, he's fired in the air to scare people. We know this has been fired. Investigation, why was this gun fired? This guy was committing a robbery. We know who he is. We know his registration. We know his ID number. We know his identity to get him as quickly. And probably that's the only act of violence he'll do, because he can't do again. Because his picture has been sent out and stuff like that. So yes, we can improve because the technology of manufacturing guns is there. Guns will be manufactured. But we can dry out the detachment from a firearm to the person who's firing it by bridging them together. Just manufacturing guns that only get registered, and once they're registered, you cannot re-register them again. So once I've bought that gun, it's mine for life. The only thing is I return it to be destroyed. It cannot be resold. Things like that. Smart way of making sure that the gun and the gun owner are one. I think that's a smart way to go.
Leo, it seems like we're coming back to the gun debate a few times.
Yes.
Just to ask you a question I've been thinking about.
Yes, sir.
what happens when you create a class of people who are allowed to be armed and most of the population is not?
Yeah.
So in addition to the inequality we already have in our country right now, you'd give basically rich people and the upper middle class the power to take away life.
Yes.
If you keep doing this and make our society more and more unequal by the day, you create a class of people who honestly believe that the only way to get out of the system is to destroy it.
Yes.
Do you think this will destabilize the whole society we've built?
Actually, that's a very valid point, and that's true. Because the way it is, you're right, it creates the risk of creating a group of people who have access to a gun, which is a force multiplier. They don't have the ability to take life. Even poor people can take your life. You don't need a gun to take life. You can use a knife, you can just strangle somebody, you can beat him to death, you can do a lot of things. So you are giving people with the capacity to have a force multiplier, and the rest of the people are denied, not via law or fiat, they're denied because of their lack of access or because of their financial capacity. That is true. So that is something that needs to be incorporated in a larger scheme. And that's why I said we can't just look at this as a single thing. We have to look at how we redesign our society as Africa to give people purpose so that they can earn. Knowing that if you throw money at people, they'll just still be poor. So the issue isn't giving people money, the issue is giving them a purpose so that they then create and generate wealth. So that is why I'm saying the gun issue cannot be isolated. You can't just give people guns or give people the capacity to buy guns and leave it at that. No, we need to rethink the whole architecture of Africa. We are techies. We know that there are certain patches that you cannot just do. There are certain flaws which are systemic in the design of the application you've built. You need to redesign your application. Certain things you can patch them, certain you cannot. This particular issue, in terms of insecurity, in terms of youth getting disenfranchised, in terms of the growing inequality, cannot be solved by just one or two things. It has to be, the whole system has to be redesigned. How we've structured our society has to be redesigned to be able to hold our elected officials, our leaders more accountable. We need to hold them to make them more accountable. We need to redesign this structure and make it like us. We inherited a structure which we did not know how well it functioned or how it's good and bad. We inherited a structure, and all we did after we inherited the structure, we just ran with it. Now we need to sit down and redesign. Who will redesign it? Who are we as Africans? How are we doing X as opposed to Y? Why are we, for example, having a president rather than a prime minister? Why don't we have a United States of Africa? Why do we have single states that war with each other? Why are we tribalistic? Why don't we include more people? We need to dig deep as Africans and come up with a society that works for all. Like the way our forefathers kind of did. Yes, does that answer you?
It does on some level. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, it's like a hard concept to grasp. Like redesigning a whole society is like a task that's going to take generations at least.
Yeah.
So there are really no easy answers to counterterrorism. But we're hoping that tech is going to be like a key part of implementing solutions to our problems.
Tech makes everything easier and smaller. Tech connects all of us. For the first time in history, every single Kenyan has the capacity to talk to each other and give their opinion on an issue that involves Kenyans. Before, you had letters, you had newspapers. Now you can go online, tweet about it. In fact, we can have a forum, build a forum where every Kenyan is logged in and every Kenyan has a say in what's going on. In fact, now more than ever, we don't need multiple generations to redesign our society. Maybe 10 years. Build a forum where everybody is involved, a social forum, and everybody chimes in, and we will do it in 10 years. We have the capacity to get everybody's opinion. We have the capacity to have everybody's hold on it real time. So anyway, that's I guess my last on it. Max, what do you think?
Okay. Yeah, that works. And also, I think that we should also have more forums whereby people can, sort of like a neighborhood watch, a digital form of a neighborhood watch, whereby people can be able to share what is going on in their hood. I think what Kenyans are lacking is a way to reach out to one another easily. Yeah, I think that can really work.
So if you want to contribute to the Nyumba Kumi initiative, I think you should look on it.
All right, so thank you everyone for tuning in today to this podcast. It was a very sort of different one. We talked about tech, we talked about terrorism, mostly about terrorism, but I feel that it was an important issue to discuss more than anything. And I'm grateful for the guests that we had and for all the input that they've given towards this topic. And for all of you listeners, I hope that you take away all the best things that you've heard from this podcast and share them with your friends and family. And just keep watch, keep be on the lookout. Stay true to your neighbor, and together we can avert terrorism and bring it to an end. All right, until next time, have a good day.